Hey everybody, this is Randy once again with Perfect Post-Production, where your favorite plosives meet with their ultimate demise. Anyhow, we are going to talk today about exporting clips. Now, sometimes in your workflow, what will end up happening is you are working with other people or you're working with a particular kind of footage or a particular camera. And what'll end up happening is that you can't necessarily just hand them, a 15 gigabyte file to deal with doing visual effects or some other work. Like in some ways, certain color correction or color work could also be dealt with this way. What ends up happening is that you have your camera footage, it comes in as whatever it is. It could be, in this case, in this example, we're going to use some footage from a Red camera, but it could also be from Blackmagic Cinema camera, could be raw footage from a Canon 5D Mark III, could be any of these things. Generally speaking, those files are going to be so big that if you had to send them over something like WeTransfer or some other thing like that to another person for work, it ends up being, it's too large. It takes like days just to get that stuff, and it could be that you can't just meet up with them and hand them a hard disk, or maybe you don't have a hard disk hanging around. Who knows? So what ends up happening is that you need to come up with what they call a digital intermediate. It provides a different way to transfer your picture from one person to another, and it may not be the original format. The example that I'm using is that we have this film here, which is my friend's Navjot Bandewadaker. He's directed this film called Flawless, and we have several shots in the film that are need to go out to different people. I've got, the main picture is, like I said, red raw, and it's going out to one person for color, and it's going out to another person for visual effects, and and sound and all these other things. But for right now, we're really concerned with the picture. And the trouble is that I can't send these red raw files to the visual effects guy. So because they're just enormous, and generally speaking, we're using just a few seconds of footage instead of the entire thing. So you've got, generally when you record a film, you're recording these long takes, and they're, they could be minutes, and you do several tries in each time before you tell the camera to turn off. And so you really just want to capture the very essence of what you need to have your visual effects guys work on. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about how to export certain clips out of this and keep track of them so that you can reintegrate them later. That's the important part. Is any workflow that you have is going to need to be round tripped. You need to be able to send it out and get it back and still know what to do with it when you get it. So it makes sense. All right, so let's get started. What we've got is this timeline, which has 20 minutes of film on it, and Nav is gonna. He'll be thrilled that we've decided to use it this way. What we've got is all these different clips. Let's say we've got this one right here. Well, maybe it's this one right here. Yeah, actually, we're very close now. Okay, yeah, this is the one. So say there's this clip right here. We want to export that for somebody else to work on. Right now, if you look at it right now, the metadata, this is an R3D red file, okay? I don't even want to tell you how big that file is, how many takes it took. And actually, if you wanted to, you can just do a match frame in the source window here. You can see that the in and out points are relatively a small amount of the entire clip. The entire clip is more than 5 minutes. What is it? It's it's a minute, and we're using 5 seconds out of that minute. So a minute on Red 3D or Red RAW footage is ridiculously huge. Okay, so suffice it to say, that's not going to work for us. We don't want to go down that road. So what we end up doing is, and here's the other thing that makes it really frustrating. In a program like Premiere Pro, there's no easy way. They don't make it obvious, all right, on how to say, I want to export just this clip right here. And it's already, you've got it in your timeline. You're like, yeah, why can't you right click on it and just export this? Or if you want to do, oh, okay, well, I'll just do an in and an out, and we'll just export the in and out points. Well, you can do it that way. The trouble that you run into is that you lose, when you export that way, what ends up happening is you lose all sorts of metadata that's associated with the file. So you can go over here and go to export media, and you'll see that it comes up and it shows you you can do sequence in and out, and by default that's what it chooses when you do something from the timeline and you have in and out points. The export settings will automatically select just the sequence in and out. The trouble is that now you have to come up with like a witty name for it. Are you just exporting the video or the audio? What codec are you going to use? Generally speaking, we'll talk about codecs in a minute. This is not what I would consider. I would not recommend doing it this way. All right. What I recommend is, and clear those in and out points, is that you use there's two ways to do this, and there's a good way, and then there's the not so good way. The not so good way, just for your if that's the way you roll, is that you can come up here and you can bring up the clip by, once again, I click source, I click match frame, and it brings up the clip here in the source or the source window, and you can just export the in and out points for this. Okay, so you can go to export media. Make sure that the source window is selected when you do that. Here's the trick: is that you then are really tasked with making sure that you get this set up correctly. You need to make sure that the clip in and out is selected as the source range. You need to come over and come up with a unique name for this. Maybe you're using this same clip multiple times in the timeline. How do you tell one from another? You can be like, okay, well, you've got to come up with a, dot one or part one or clip one, something like that lets you, distinguish one from another. Perfectly fine. You can totally do it that way. Again, you want to do, are you exporting audio, and you have to come up with a format. Once again, we'll talk about that in a sec. I don't recommend doing it that way. Partly because once you've done that, you kind of lose the fact that you've created something here that you want to replace later, okay? And so the way I suggest doing it is using subclips. Now, when you do this, what's a useful thing to do is to double click on it. This is in contrast to using match frame. When you use, now the difference between match frame and double clicking on a clip in a timeline is that when you use match frame, you're actually going back to the original footage. You'll notice the source here says that it's the actual take, okay? Whereas if you double click, you're actually referring to the clip that's in a certain timeline. So this is actually this timeline, this take, and that time index, okay? So that's like, and it fills this window, fills the timeline with just the frames that you were using by default, okay? You can obviously zoom back out. You can see that the zoom it will take you back out to the entire clip if you want. All right. So from here, the best way to go is to go up to clip, make subclip, and what I do is you can come up and just create a, by default, it will pick the name of the clip and then add dot subclip 00 whatever, okay? So in this case, we're going to do 001, and we're going to have it show up, and then it creates this little icon right here, and what we'll do is we'll drag it down to a little folder that I've created called subclips, or a little bin, and now you've got a file or you've got a reference to just what's in here, all right? Best part about that is that you can take this and you can just drag it onto the timeline and over the top of your clip, all right? And you can replace it. And now you've got the entire clip here that is just the subclip, and when you come up to it, you can see that it's just the subclip that you had. and you're all set to. Now you're set where you can export this, because what makes it easy to export is you can also export clips from the project view. So here you go. You've got this subclip right here. It's named uniquely, so you're not going to have a trouble there. You come up to File, Export, Media, or Command E or Control E, depending on which system. Now you get to choose what format you're going to export this in. Generally speaking, on Macs and for most media purposes, I've been a big fan of using ProRes 444 or ProRes 4444. Anyhow, the benefit of doing it this way is that you're able to save off in very, very high quality exactly the picture data that you're trying to do. Now, obviously, 1080 is not the export settings. This film was filmed in 4K HD, so this is 3840 by 2160. Okay, and then you can go through here. We'll set up all of these little things. We'll take a quick cut here, and I'll get it ready to render, and we'll review all the settings. Here we have the settings that we're going to use for this. What I suggest is also that we change the name of this, all right? And we definitely change the folder, so we're not like running it into someplace it ought not to be. And so we'll come out to Flawless. We'll create a new folder called Clip Export. All right. And then we save this as the same name that we created in the bin here. So notice that it is Scene 8B, Close-Up, Subala, Take 1, dot, Subclip 001. All right? And that's the same name we use here, and it'll just be MOV on the end. Now, let's review this. I actually choose to export just the video because we're sending a picture off. We don't need to send audio off. Because this is just for visual effect. This is a visual effect we're sending off. If you needed to, yeah, add audio, no problem. The video codec sets to ProRes 4444, all right, or 4x4. The video settings, make sure that it is set to the size of your actual picture. Generally speaking, you can do this lock to maintain the aspect ratio. It doesn't matter in this case. Your time code should match the time code of your clip. If you're doing HD, it's always going to be progressive and square pixels in general, unless you're using some kind of weird Panasonic camera. These are the two things that you really want to make sure of. You want to make sure to check render at maximum depth, and then also that you set your depth on the ProRes 4x4 to 48-bit. Now, in this case, I've set up my clips to have a flat contrast curve. It's called a log curve. It's generally, it looks very washed out, very boring, not very interesting. But for preserving the most detail that we can take to the color step, which is a totally different tutorial, we can put this together in a format that lets the visual effects artist do what they need to do, export it out, have it match this picture, and then you send that off to color, and then they make it look gorgeous, all right? But in order to do that, you need to preserve as much data as possible. So that's why we choose 48-bit, which is 16 bits per channel for 3 channels. The red, green, and blue channels. In 4x4, it's RGB that they're saving it as. Anyway, come down here, advanced settings. You can choose to optimize stills. For most motion footage, like live action stuff, you don't bother with this. If it's animation or if it's motion graphics or things like that, you might be able to save a little bit of time encoding, not necessarily space, by clicking optimize stills. The rest of this down here, we don't generally mess with. I don't mess with most of this except for import into project. What that means is that we'll take this, once it renders this off, it's going to bring it into the project and save it, which is exactly what we want to do because we want to be able to link that out. And then we can put this into the timeline for an export to, say, your Colorist or something else. So anyhow, let's go ahead and do that. Yes, it's going to tell you that you're creating a big file, but get over yourself. And now it's going to render. So we'll come back when it's done. All right, now we're back, and we've got our footage done. You'll notice now that the clip that we created is right here. If we double click it, you notice that it is the length, only the length that we needed. Now, in some cases, you might export this to be a few frames wider in either direction, just in case you're not done totally editing. Generally speaking, when we do a visual effects export for final, I would make sure that you have locked picture, that you're not going to do any more cuts or trimming, that you like the pace of the film, that you're all set, and that you want to. You're not going to have somebody come in and say, yeah, can you make that a half second longer? Because then you don't want to even start with the headaches that causes. All right. So we've got the clip here. And what I generally do is I actually put it into its own bin. But the nice thing is that it matches the same name, which makes it easy to find when you're doing searches up here in your content or your project folder. You can find these clips pretty easily that way. And then what's the final additional fun to this is that we can take this clip, which is the subclip that we created, move it up, make sure that it just says plus 000 so that you know that you're not moving it any frames either side. And then you can take this clip and you can drop it into place. All right. Now you've got both the subclip and the fully rendered QuickTime file. What you then can do is right-click on this, click Enable. Oops. Right-click on it, click Enable. And now it's grayed out and dimmed, and we're using the ProRes 4x4 render of the file as the clip that we're actually using. So, and you'll notice if you've done it right, you can't tell that it's changed from the raw footage. This is red raw, and that's ProRes. So go enjoy yourselves. All right, so that is, and now the timeline is, this particular clip is ready for export. You can send it off to, you send that QuickTime file off to your visual effects artist to do the work on visual effects. You can send the timeline, which, like I said, is another tutorial, off to Color to be graded, and then by doing that, you actually can kind of you can get your post-production workflow a little more parallelized. You can have multiple people working on different aspects of production or post-production at the same time, and hopefully maximizing your schedule. I know Navjot's like, wait a second, dude, this film's been waiting months to be finished. All right. So that is the tutorial today. So I hope it was helpful, and if you like what you found out in this tutorial and you want more, just tell me so in the comments below what you'd like to see. Also, if you liked it, you can click like, and always subscribe for more of these fine, exciting tutorials. My name is Randy Hall, and this is Perfect Post Production. We'll see you next time.